Am I Korean? Yeah, my nationality is Korean, but I will never become a Korean. I will always be more or less an outsider just because of my skin.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Asia Future Institute's Conversation Series. Today, I am joined by a very special guest.
Thank you.
This is Henny.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Henny. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm always happy.
Always happy. That's what we like to hear.
Okay.
So, first thing, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience on YouTube?
Okay, well, easy. My name is Henny Savinje. My last name is difficult, so everybody just calls me Henny, which I totally accept. I've been in Korea for 30 years. I'm old. Come on, I'm 70 years old, but I don't feel like one. What do? I worked at universities for most of the times in my career here in Korea. But I also did drama. I did many things actually. I have many interests. The Hamel story is one of them. I did research about Hendrik Hamel, who came to Korea in the 17th century. And yeah, well, there's a lot to tell, so ask me.
There's absolutely a lot to tell. You've been here more than 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years, basically.
30 years, fluent in Korean, Dutch, English,
German, French.
French.
I can speak a little bit Japanese, a little bit Chinese, Indonesian. I speak 7 languages fluent, and with 10 more I can do my shopping.
And you've been a researcher, an actor, a teacher.
Yeah.
Excellent. So this fascination with Hamel's story, how did that lead you to moving to Korea? So did that lead you coming to Korea, or was there another reason why?
Well, I always wanted to go to Asia. And to make a long story short, first I was considering Indonesia, too poor, no, not an option. Then I was thinking China, no. Communist, no. And so that left me only with Japan. And I had some Japanese friends. I learned some Japanese. I learned Chinese before. Forgot most of my Chinese, but my Japanese is still low level, but I learned just some Japanese. And yeah, I came to Japan. I stayed there for 6 months, even found a job there. And as fate, because of my visa, I had to leave the country and come back. And some Dutch girls I met in Japan told me, "Oh, you have to go to the Philippines." Okay, fine. Let me go to the Philippines. And as fate would have it, my money was stolen there, my passport, my cameras.
Oh.
And I was stuck in the Philippines, and I thought my employer will maybe help me. And I called him, but at that time there was also an earthquake in Japan, and my workplace was gone.
The whole building just leveled.
The epicenter of that earthquake was in that island where I found the job. Oh well, so I was stuck in the Philippines. I survived by teaching Koreans English because there were a lot of Koreans there. And actually, my research stems from after meeting the Koreans, but okay. And they always said to me, "Don't go back to Korea, to Japan. No, you have to come to Korea. We need people like you here." And one of them even said, "Oh, you can stay in my house as long as you want." And okay, somehow I managed to get an airplane ticket. That's a special story as well. To Korea, and I was here, and I stayed there, and his parents didn't like it, and I had some other friends, so I stayed somewhere else, and yeah, finally...
Couch surfing.
Yeah. Finally I stayed, and I never left again.
So it was almost by chance that you just ended up in Korea?
Yeah.
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 That's quite a story.
Yeah.
That's That's a quite fun way to end up here.
Yeah, right.
But you built a life, you got a career,
Right.
children, wife, family, and you've been here for 30 years now.
Yeah. My personal experience, have I been discriminated? Oh, yes. By my parents-in-law.
Okay.
My parents-in-law were totally against the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And my story is not unique. That story, I've heard that many times. One of my American friends got chased by his father-in-law with a baseball bat.
Wow.
One Canadian guy realized his girlfriend was gone and her parents had put her in a mental asylum.
Because she wanted to get married
Yeah.
to someone who's not Korean.
My wife, basically, I went back to the Netherlands. My wife just took the airplane and she told her parents, I'm going to stay with a friend. She took the airplane and went to the Netherlands. We married in the Netherlands, but my father-in-law was even willing, with the help of the Korean ambassador there, to kidnap her. That's a funny story.
That's
First,
quite a story. My goodness.
First, my wife didn't want to call her parents. I said, no, you have to inform your parents. You can't just stay away and leave them in the blue. So finally she called. And they tried to convince her to come back. She didn't. And she said, I'm going to marry. Okay, fine. Then at a certain moment we got a telegram. Father is sick, had an accident, you have to come. And I told her, I don't trust this. Then by chance we went the weekend away from our house, and then we got another telegram, father is dead, come immediately. The only problem was it was signed with his name. Small mistake. Then my sister-in-law said, I'm coming to the Netherlands and I want to be there at the wedding. Okay, fine. So we went to the airport and yeah, surprise, surprise. The dead father came from the airplane. He was trying to buy me off with money, and then he said, oh, I want to go to The Hague and visit the E. June Museum. And I said, okay, fine, let's go. And no, I only want to go with my daughter. I said, no, I'm joining. And in The Hague, he said, oh, well, I want to visit the Korean embassy as well. And I told my wife, you're not going inside the embassy because that's Korean soil and they can do anything with you. And yes, later he admitted I was planning, with the help of the ambassador, to put her on a plane. Mm-hmm. But all didn't happen, and we got married, and for a year or something like that, we have not been in touch with her parents. Mm-hmm. They were furious. And when Benjamin, my first son, was born, we sent them a photo in Hamburg. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was the turning point. And when we finally came back to Korea, I became their favorite son-in-law.
So for them, it just took time. It took getting used to the idea that...
Yeah.
Did they ever say what their biggest concern was? Was it just because you weren't Korean, or was there any...
age difference. And yeah, the fact that I was a foreigner. I mean, before I met my wife, I had dated some other girls, and yeah, they had similar problems. It's and again, that was not a story which was unusual. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, yesterday I spoke with Dave, and Dave Lamka has been in Korea since the 1970s. Yeah, I've even spoken with a guy who came to Korea in the 1950s, and in the meantime he's dead, but mm-hmm. Dave told me yesterday he was working as a health officer, mm-hmm. and the nurses who helped him, they were ostracized. just for the fact that they walked with a foreigner and considered to be a slut. I think in the 1990s, little by little, that attitude started to change. And in the short while we've been in the Netherlands, changes went really fast because I barely recognized Korea when I came back. And I think maybe the biggest problem is not as much that foreigners were ostracized. It was more, let me put it this way, the army, the American army, the US army base here in Seoul didn't leave a good name for any foreigner. I've been, Itaewon is not my favorite place, but yeah, I went there occasionally and I've seen bad things happening there. A Korean prostitute who was murdered by an American soldier. Yes, they misbehaved, literally. And the other thing, of course, is, Dave and I talked about it yesterday too, many foreigners tend to hang out with other foreigners.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming back to the Netherlands and Germany too. The immigrants who integrated into the society, they were accepted.
Yeah.
But the ones who stayed outside and in this foreign group and did not integrate, they were the ones who were actually making a bad name for all the others who wanted to integrate. The same is true for the Netherlands, for the Moroccans and the Turkish, and the same is true for the Turkish in Germany, and probably for the Indians in England too. So again, the fact that foreigners in another country, it doesn't matter if that's Korea or if it's the Netherlands or India or wherever, they tend to hang out with other foreigners.
Right.
And therefore, integration is a difficult point. Am I Korean? Yeah, my nationality is Korean, but I will never become a real Korean. I will always be more or less an outsider just because of my skin. I think racism in Korea is a relatively new thing. If you go back in history, the Persians were in Shilla and they integrated. Jan Sebeltevre became an advisor to the court, married with a Korean. The castaways, they also married with Koreans. And when Sebeltevre went to Jeju-do to help the governor to translate with the Dutch, the governor asked the castaways, do you know what kind of man this is? And yeah, they said, oh wow, this is a Dutchman just like us. And the governor said, no, he's a Korean like us, meaning they accepted foreigners before. And maybe the Japanese occupation, colonization has been the turning point, and maybe the Korean War as well. The turning point that Koreans became xenophobic.
This kind of idea of one nation, one blood, one people.
Park Chung-hee was the one who promoted it as well.
Right.
So a lot of it is also related to that.
That wraps things up for today, so we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.